Good morning. Good morning. I really like that next to last song that we sang. I brought it up here. I was going to read it again. It said, God of the Bible, God in the gospel, hope seen in Jesus. Fresh as the morning and as sure as the sunrise. God always faithful, you do not change. And I really like that. Maps, signposts, travel, and me. What do these all have in common? How might these relate to our journey with God? I've never really been good at reading maps. My sense of direction, I don't really have one. I can look at a map, I get the general idea, but the details of the layout, etc., they just don't make sense. I have no direction. I tend to get lost if I'm driving somewhere that I've not actually been before. When I'm a passenger, I don't really need to pay attention to the road. If I'm driving, I need printed directions and maybe a GPS turned on, but then that doesn't always help. To give you an example, this happened back in March when Pastor Dave asked if I might consider giving a message. And so in my head I said, okay, now I know why this happened. But in March I was heading to Toledo after getting done teaching at Calvary. I had a foreign language meeting that would be in Toledo on Saturday. I was to stay at Greg and Michelle Nafziger's overnight in Archbold, and then I would only have an hour's drive the next morning. Many of you have been to Archbold. I've been there a few times. I was a passenger with Lynx. I went with Esther different times because she's been there before, and it's not that long of a drive. Michelle had emailed me directions, so I had my paper in hand, I had my cup of coffee, and I was ready to go. I got to Blue Lake Road, just outside of Lima, but my notes on her email didn't really tell me which way to go at the stop sign. So I chose to go right. After a couple of miles, I wasn't seeing anything that was too familiar, and I didn't want to call Michelle to let her know that maybe I was lost. So I said, I'll call Esther. So I got Esther on the phone, and the first thing she said was, well, you turned left off of Blue Lake, right? No, I turned right. Okay, Mom, that's a mistake. That's mistake number one. So I stayed on the phone and I was talking to her, and she had me turn around, and she talked until I got to the next road that was on my directions, my email directions. Now I'm on my way. Well, I drove for close to an hour and I could not find the road that was indicated on my printout. And I got quickly frustrated because I was in the middle of nowhere, had no clue what to do, and once again, I was lost. That's when God spoke to me. And here's the conversation we had. Michelle lives in the town where you're headed, and she's familiar with the surrounding area. She wrote the directions for you. Why don't you call Michelle? My God, she'll think I'm stupid. That I can't read the directions that she sent me. And then she'll say, well, you're lost. Well, you are lost. Who better to help you than someone who is waiting at the destination point? So I called her and I stated some of the roads that I was driving by, and she got on her computer and pulled up a map, and she was able to guess where I might be. And this time she gave me some landmarks to look for. She said there's a Speedway gas station that'll be on the left-hand side, and a little farther you'll see a school on the right-hand side, and it's at a flashing light, and you'll turn right there. Visual landmarks, spoken words, and printed directions. I was so relieved when I arrived at their house 4 hours after my departure time. us how to get from point A to point B. And there are all kinds of maps that we can use. You have an atlas, my trusty atlas. Or you might have a GPS, and we have a GPS that is no longer able to download updates. Or you might have your Google map, the printout. And on this one that she sent me, I have scribbled all over it the visuals that I need to look for next time I go. Landmarks guide my way. No matter what kind you use, as I said, there's a beginning point and an ending point. There might be construction or roadblocks along the way, so you'd have to take an unexpected detour. You might have a backseat driver with you who will change the perception of the road that you're taking, or you might be driving alone. You might misread the map and take a wrong turn. Or it could be simply following a route that is familiar, one that you've been on many times. That experience really made me think how the journey with God is like following a map. All of us walk with God in our own way, allowing faith to be our foundation. So this is representing the Bible, my faith. The path may be straight, or it may have detours that take us off the desired course. It's sometimes confusing to know which direction to take. You might wonder if you're still headed in the right direction. God has provided written details, stories, and experiences, and as Dick said, they're all in the Bible. Over the past few months, we've been challenged to read through the Bible, peering into the lives of many different people and observing their journey with God. The call of Abraham to leave his land and go to an unknown place, and he had no map. Moses leading the Israelites through the wilderness and enduring a 40-year detour instead of a direct route like he might have preferred. Ruth going with Naomi, leaving her homeland in Moab, and she was uncertain of what the destination will bring. And then there's King David, and all the roadblocks that he faced as he strived to be a man after God's own heart. It has been interesting reconnecting with the stories of the Old Testament. I love seeing how God was at work in so many different lives, making his presence known throughout the generations. In the Bible, God's map begins in Genesis and it ends in Revelation. It's as if his map is a large atlas that's stretched across the ages, with numerous glimpses at others' faith walk. These biblical accounts and life lessons that we can glean from the individuals in the story give us an inside look at the map that they were following, and they become visual landmarks for us today. As it says in Psalms 32, verse 8, I will instruct you and teach you in the way of the Lord. I will counsel you with my eye upon you. Maps are one way to give directions, and signposts or markers help provide the visual awareness, and we use both when we travel. In Old Testament times, an ebenezer was a stone that was set up as God's presence and help. And that's a picture of an ebenezer. It's found in Genesis, Joshua, and 1 Samuel. And in the Samuel passage, he took a stone and he set it up and he named it Ebenezer. He was providing a visual for the Israelites to help them remember how God had helped them. Later in the book of Jeremiah, in 31:21, it says, set up road signs, put up guideposts, take note of the highway, the journey you take. The Bible has many stories of how God called people to leave and journey into new places. He always promised he would show them the way to go. Mistakes were frequent. Sometimes people wanted to figure out the map so that they could do the traveling themselves. But when trouble arose or roadblocks appeared, God was called upon again and again. Just like God reminded me when you're feeling lost, call someone who is at the destination point. God knows where you are and how best to lead you. And that's when a stone is set up as a reminder. My nephew, Bryce Blosser, went on a journey this spring. He kept a journal of his reflections during his month of travel. And I asked if I could use just a few lines from what he had written. Some things he said was, "God has guided me through good and bad, regardless if I decide to acknowledge it at the time or not. To this day, I believe God lined up every interaction I had for a reason. God wants me right here, for whatever reason, right now." In another entry, he said, "God wants us to put our trust in Him. He promises to walk alongside of us every step of the way, leading us through the storms." And his last thing he said was, "I have been struggling with not knowing what my future holds. But God is starting to show me to trust Him one step at a time. I need to live for Him right here and now. He will show me the next step, in His time, not mine. If I live for the Lord, my future can't be anything but amazing." It reminded me of the patriarchal stories, and it reminded me of having very specific visuals along his path. So how do maps and signposts, how have they guided me on my path with God? What visual have I set up? How is my faith walk getting from point A to point B? I love traveling and experiencing new places and cultures. It stretches me in my thoughts, in my relationships, in my preferences. I have always had a desire to see the world, to be forced to see God outside of my comfort zone, to be stretched to see how I fit into His plan. I will give you a glimpse of my life map and some landmarks along the way. I was able to start realizing my dream of traveling and experiencing different cultures soon after high school. At Heston, I had the opportunity to spend a month living with an Indian family on a Navajo reservation. I had the opportunity to sit and listen to them speak their native language. I had no clue what was being said. I tried to learn the colors and the numbers so that I might be able to play Uno with the kids. I tried to help the grandmother tend to sheep. But actually, communicating did not really happen. It's during that experience that I first learned the importance of paying attention to nonverbal expression. Learn to use the eyes of my heart to give some meaning to what my ears could not understand. And that's the next part of my Ebenezer. After graduating from EMU, I had the opportunity to live in Europe for a year with two different families, both from a French-speaking area, but Low German was their mother tongue. They would speak German with me, but I had many opportunities to listen to German, and I soon learned how to distinguish some often repeated words, and I could even ask a few questions or give responses in German. I so wanted to speak with them in the language that was natural for them. That's good. I like this. About 2 years after returning from Europe and getting married, a new journey presented itself. Ken and I had the opportunity to go to Montreal, Quebec, and work with MCC. Being submersed in the French culture for 2 years changed the direction of my life. I felt God calling me to be a teacher. In Montreal, I loved being with people. I interacted with them, I taught survival skills to the refugees, and I helped them learn French or English so they could get along in the city. but at the same time understand their personal story. What I had to offer needed to be shaped around their life experience. I needed to again use my eyes to help me hear. And there's a quote from one of my favorite French books. It's Le Petit Prince. And in the book it says, "Here is my secret, a very simple secret. It is only with the heart that one can see rightly. What is essential is invisible to the eye." How do these experiences relate to what I've said about maps and Ebenezers? They give testimony to my walk, how I've been shaped and prepared for the next steps. Proverbs 4:26 says, "Give careful thought to the paths of your feet, and be steadfast in all your ways." Isaiah 30:21, "And whether you turn to the right or turn to the left, your ears will hear a message behind you. This is the way, walk in it." Those early experiences changed my direction. I thought I knew the map that I was called to follow. But signs and landmarks, personal experiences along the way, helped me realize that God's map is sometimes beyond my understanding or even my well-planned objectives. Looking back over the years since then, I realize there have been other stones that have been set up to remind me of God's help and guidance. How Ken and I ended up here in West Liberty after being done in Montreal. How the teaching job at West Liberty opened up at the right time. How even after being reduced to part-time at the school a few years ago, seeing God open other doors. I've been able to return to Europe and Montreal many times and share those different cultures with students, family, and friends. I have perhaps helped others to see and learn the world through new eyes. I remember when Michelle Link came with me on one of my trips. She had a large map that she highlighted wherever we would travel. She would highlight it on the map. But she also had many questions of what she was seeing along the way. And that's the best way to journey. Have some type of map to give you the large picture, highlight points along the way, and yet realize that sometimes to understand and appreciate the points along the way, you need a friend to share the experience with. My journey with God has been a stretching experience. It has had many twists and turns. My route has had detours and roadblocks. Sometimes I felt really lost and alone. Other times the traveling companions added new dimensions to the experience I was having. But no matter where I go or what I see along my journey, I know God is leading me. He keeps me headed in the right direction. As we tell how God has helped us, we will be a witness to others so that the world may know there is a God in heaven and that He's active in our lives. Another spin. Perhaps. God has called us to be visual representations of Christ's love. I heard someone say once that sometimes we are the only living example that Christ sees. So I'll repeat that. Sometimes we are the only living example of Christ that others see. Therefore, no matter what type of map you use to get from point A to point B, remember to set up your reminders. Raise an Ebenezer. Have visible markers of His help and presence. May you become a living, standing reminder of how God is an active part of His creation. As Stanley Green said in an article, A Life of Service to God, every one of us is called into a journey with God, a relationship with our Creator, in which we must discern what serving God requires in the changing vistas and contexts of our lives. And to repeat Ephesians 2:21 and 22. You are built upon the foundation that was laid by the apostles and the prophets, the cornerstone being Christ himself. In union with him, you two are being built together with all the others into a place where God lives through his Spirit.